Chapter 6 of the Virtue of Faith and how Most Holy Mary practiced it. In few words, the Holy Elizabeth described the greatness of the faith of Most Holy Mary, when, as reported to us by the evangelist Luke, she exclaimed, "Blessed art thou for having believed, because the words and promise of the Lord shall be fulfilled in thee." The faith of this great lady must be estimated from the greatness of her good fortune and beatitude, and from her ineffable dignity, for her faith inspired her with so great and so excellent a belief in God that it merited a place inferior only to God himself. She believed that sacrament of all sacraments and mysteries, which was to be fulfilled in her own self. So great was the prudence and the divine light in Mary, our mistress, in believing this new and unheard of mystery of the Incarnation, that it surpassed all human and angelic understanding, and that it could be properly estimated and understood only in the divine mind, the workshop of the Most High, where in the power of his right hand all the virtues of this queen had their origin and completion. I always find myself taken aback and stupefied whenever I speak of these virtues, and more particularly of the interior ones. For though great is the light and intelligence which were given to me concerning them, yet too limited are human terms to describe the concept and acts of faith, which were engendered in the mind and spirit of her, who was the most faithful of all creatures. Or rather, of her, who was greater in faith than all of them taken together. I will say what I can, acknowledging my inability to say what I desire, and much more, what is due to the reality. The faith of the Most Holy Mary was an image of the whole creation, and an open prodigy of the divine power. For in her the virtue of faith existed in the highest and the most perfect degree possible. In a certain manner and to a great extent, it made up for the want of faith in men. The Most High has given this excellent virtue to mortals so that, in spite of the carnal and mortal nature, they might have the knowledge of the divinity and of his mysteries and admirable works. A knowledge so certain and infallibly secure that it is like seeing him face to face, and like the vision of the blessed angels in heaven. The same object and the same truth which they see openly, we perceive obscured under the veil of faith. One glance at the world will make us understand how many nations, reigns, and provinces, since the beginning of the world, have lost their claims to this great blessing of the faith, so little understood by the thankless mortals. How many have unhappily flung it aside, after the Lord had conferred it on them in his generous mercy, and how many of the faithful, having without their merit received the gift of faith, neglect and despise it, letting it lie idle and unproductive for the last end to which it is to direct and guide them. It was befitting, therefore, that the divine equity should have some recompense for such lamentable loss, and that such an incomparable benefit should find an adequate and proportionate return, as far as is possible from creatures. It was befitting that there should be found at least one creature in whom the virtue of faith should come to its fullest perfection, as an example and rule for the rest. All this was found in the great faith of the Most Holy Mary, and on account of her, and for her alone, if there had been no other creature in the world, it would have been most proper that God should contrive and create the excellent virtue of faith. For according to our way of understanding, Mary, by herself, was a sufficient pledge to the divine providence that he would find a proper return on the part of man, and that the object of this faith would not be frustrated by the want of corresponding among mortals. The faith of this sovereign queen was to make recompense for their default, and she was to copy the divine prototype of this virtue in its highest perfection. All the other faithful can measure and gauge themselves by the faith of this mistress, for they will be more or less faithful the more or less they approach the perfection of her incomparable faith. Therefore, she was set as teacher and example of all the believing, including the patriarchs, prophets, apostles, and martyrs, and all that have believed or will believe in the Christian doctrines to the end of the world.